want to make you aware of some changes to Uber that have happened in the state of California. So California has brought in a new law that is trying to protect people from being exploited by being called independent contractors, even though they behave as employees. And I don't want to get into the whole politics behind that. I just want to point out that this has either inadvertently or intentionally forced some changes at Uber. And so in pretty much any other state, when you are booking an Uber, you have a price that you agree upon beforehand, which I think is one of the better things that you get with Uber than versus a taxi. Because a taxi, you don't know if they're going to take you on a merry chase the long way, if it's a town that you don't know. You don't know if it's a gypsy cab. The accountability is problematic. Do you know how to spot a fake medallion? I don't. So there's a lot of different risks. Will there be traffic? Will they take a circuitous route? And all of that could add to your expense. And so when you get into a taxi or a cab, you're saying, all right, I'm going to pay whatever happens. I don't know. I don't control it. There should be something posted that explains how these rates are calculated, largely taking it on faith that the meter's doing it right, and it probably is. But the fact is you don't know in advance. And I don't like buying things when I don't know the price before I buy it. Who does that? You might do it with produce. You're not sure how heavy these oranges are. So, but yeah, but with most other things that you buy, you want to know the price beforehand, and you expect to know the price beforehand. I know the price of my cruise before I pay and commit. I know the price of my hotel. I know the price of my flights, but I don't know the price of my cab ride. If I get a shuttle, I know that. And so that's one of the things I like about Uber and Lyft is that I know, and I could see, I'm like, okay, it's going to be exactly $26.37. Maybe that's not great. I'm going to look into a shuttle. Maybe the surge pricing, I'll do it later. Maybe I'll hang out for a little bit. Or maybe, hey, you know what? Yes, I agree to that price. I know I'm going to pay that. I might end up paying more if I decide to tip, but that's under my control as the consumer. So now, because of this, there's no fixed price with Uber in California. So what they do is they provide a range, which is an estimate. And so I'm not casting any blame here. I'm not pointing any fingers. But from a customer experience, that's not so fantastic. I can go online, and there are taxi fare estimators for pretty much all over North America. And so I can get that. So I think that Uber's losing a competitive advantage there against sort of the taxi monopoly that exists in some places. Most notably Vancouver, but that's actually seeming to be coming to an end. The monopoly seems to be broken up because Uber and Lyft is apparently now in Vancouver. It happened just after we left, so we weren't there for that. But I haven't liked that monopoly for many reasons. For example, the dirtiest Uber or Lyft I've ever been in has been cleaner than the cleanest taxi I've ever been in. So from a customer experience standpoint. But they're losing the competitive advantage of knowing that. Price protection is also gone as a consequence of that. And apparently you can no longer cancel. And so that it seems to be degrading the service and making the service seem more like taxis. And the thing is, Uber and Lyft, they have still some advantages over taxis because honestly, I think the accountability is better. I've got the person's picture and license plate in the app. I can screenshot that if I want to. I've probably got a record of it. They're paid electronically. I pay electronically. It's not a cash transaction. There were recent stories about somebody had left their cell phone in a cab in Vancouver on New Year's, and they demanded like $100 ransom to return it to the person. Now, I'm not saying that you should have a free taxi ride for your phone. If you forgot it, there should be some responsibility. But they didn't offer the person to come pick it up at the depot at no charge. Apparently, they had a policy of they'll bring it to you for like $20 or $25 or something, which that's somewhat reasonable, but that's not what they did. What they did is they ransomed it for $100. The person said no. They handed it over to another driver who further ransomed it and said, yeah, $100 again. And when it went to the media got this attention and they went to the cab company said that didn't happen. And yeah, we have a policy of the $20 or whatever, and that's what was offered. Apparently the guy had video. I haven't seen it. But like those sorts of things you really hear about in the cab and the taxi industry that seems that there's no accountability or consequences for the driver. Whereas with Uber and Lyft, I had a really bad experience in California on a Lyft. We tried to hail the Lyft, and he was texting us, And when he was trying to figure out where we were, it turns out he didn't know the area very well, but he was a local. He just kept texting us things like, there's lots of people. And so I specifically replied, like, this is not helpful. I am at the corner of this and this in front of this building at this address. Can you meet us? Oh, there's lots of people. There's tons of people. So many people. Too many people. I'm like, I don't understand. He eventually called me, started yelling at me. And then when he arrived, he started yelling at me. And then he slowly, took his turn yelling at everyone in my party. And then he was a dangerous driver. Going to the airport. At one point, he blocked 3 lanes at the airport. He turned into oncoming traffic. He did many dangerous things. But I knew his name. I had his picture. I knew his license. Or not his, I knew the license number, the plate number of the car, I should say. And I had the ability to follow up with Lyft. And Lyft actually responded really fairly well to that. So I gave him a 1-star rating and no tip because he was verbally abusive. And we had a flight to make. And so I was just like, let's just get this over with. And so Lyft reached out to me and I explained what had happened. Lyft apologized. They made it so that driver could never be matched with me again in the future. And they refunded the fare. And they said that they are actually, they're going to be putting him on some sort of probationary period where they're going to be evaluating his driving performance and customer service. And they've spoken with him and followed up with him about that. I can't think of a story where I've heard a taxi company or a cab company take that kind of responsibility with one of their drivers. I mean, they certainly, because of the sort of lack of infrastructure, they can never say, we'll never send you that driver again. And that's a very easy thing to do in Uber and Lyft. And as I understand it, one of the things that Uber has done as part of these changes is they said, anyone you give a 1-star rating to, you automatically will not be matched with ever again. Makes perfect sense to me. That should be an automatic function. So good on them for that. And so I still feel like Uber and Lyft is a better option for a variety of reasons, for that accountability, the improved service, all those sorts of things. Even though I did have that one bad Lyft ride, I felt like they did everything they could to try and correct it. Whereas a cab company, I don't feel like I have a recourse of any kind, at least not back in Vancouver before Uber and Lyft came along. But I do feel like these changes in California make Uber more like a taxi or a cab with, that uncertainty of the price in particular. And so that makes shuttles seem more appealing, but Super Shuttle recently shut down in California and everywhere. But that was what I used to use in California. So this makes me less keen to go to California, honestly, because it makes getting around town harder. I doubt that is something that they were going for, but it is, I think, an unintended consequence of that legislation. So I just wanted to make people aware. So when they go to California, they're not surprised when it behaves differently than all the other states.